It's Emil. It's Emil Guillermo. Emil Amok to you. Happy Monday. The start of the week. Did you have a good weekend? Did you succeed in trying to get away from the Queen? She's dead, but it seems like we can't escape her. She's everywhere. I know. And then 9/11, right? Actually, the day that you have to really remember is 9/12. Some people say 9/10. Oh, yeah, that's the way things used to be. That's why you remember 9/10. But you got to remember 9/12 because that's when it sinks in. That's when you say, we're in a different world. This is a different time. This is 9/12. What happened on 9/12, 2001? How did you process what happened the day before? Or were you still in shock? 21 years after that, that's what I'm thinking about. And the confluence of these historical events, the Queen's death, the Queen. Everyone wants to think that, she's everyone's queen. But she really belongs to the Commonwealth, to Great Britain. She's not our queen. Not if you're from America. Not if you're from, a country that managed to stay free of the British Empire. Thank goodness. Because when you think about the Queen and you put it in perspective, you say, oh my God, what is the Queen, in fact? What does she do? What does she represent? She's this monarch that is really the great royal deodorizer for the British Empire. If you think about it, I had some time to think about this weekend. In fact, you should check out my columns on ALDEF, the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, aldef.org/blog. I connect the dots for you. I'll read from my column in a bit. I'll also talk about the first thing I heard, King Charles III, the newly minted King Charles III, what he said about the weight of history is upon us. And I think it's true. The weight of history is, we should all be feeling it, sort of like that, that feeling of, that humidity upon us, especially as, well, we're in September. But some of us are experiencing a kind of heat. The heat is dissipating where I am in California. But that weight of history, how are you managing it? Because Charles was saying he feels the weight of history surrounding him. It's an important thing. So we'll talk about that here on Emil Amok's Takeout, my takes on all things considerable. This is my micro talk show, where I give you an Asian American Filipino perspective. Look, I don't speak for all Asian Americans, so I'll just dial it back and say, look, I have an Asian American Filipino perspective on the news that no one rarely asks about. It's a decent perspective. It's a take. It's my take. And I'll get into it in a second. First, I want to talk about something that's coming up if you're in New York City. Actually, you don't have to be in New York. That's the beauty of a reading, a virtual stage reading of a new play that I'm in. Ishmael Reed, the noted African-American writer, playwright, he's really a Renaissance guy, right? Ishmael Reed, his fame has extended through the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, 2010s, 2020. My God, how many decades is that? 6, 7 decades? Anyway, theaterforthenewcity.net is where you can get tickets for The Conductor, a new play that Ishmael wrote. It's Thursday, October 13th, October 14th, and let's say it extends through the 16th, Thursday through Sunday. I'm in this reading, stage reading, theaterforthenewcity.net. They're the New York City Theater that's sponsoring it, but it's going to be virtual. And of course, that way you can see it from anywhere. I'll be in California still. I might be in New York. I'm not sure. I mean, if it goes live, I guess I'll have to consider being there. But October 13th through 16th, a play in 2 acts performed in 4 live stream virtual readings. It's about the conductor. Reed challenges the billionaire's manipulated use of an electoral recall in San Francisco to overturn the wishes of the electorate, not only in San Francisco, but everywhere. These billionaires are beyond government. They are warlords who dox their opponents with the aid of ignorant, often armed grunts who do their dirty work. It's a fantasy piece, but real. Ishmael Reed, who is a longtime friend of mine, was a teacher of mine when I studied at WashU in St. Louis. Imagine I was there, WashU, graduate student, right? And he was my teacher. And I read the play. I have a very small part. I read it and I thought, my God, this is like a George Bernard Shaw moment for Ishmael, because we both write these, essays, commentaries, and later in his life, Ishmael, from being a novelist, then ventured out into librettos and plays. I mean, he's really, like I said, Renaissance guy. And then wrote opinion pieces, and now he's taken to the stage as a playwright. The Conductor, if you remember the story about the recalls in San Francisco, where billionaire sponsored move to oust an entire school board made national headlines. Ishmael takes that on, and it's all in his play, The Conductor. Catch it on October 13th through 16th. It's a virtual play, live stream virtual reading at the Theater for the New City in New York. But it's virtual, so you can be anywhere. Tickets are available at theaterforthenewcity.net. That's theater, Theater, theaterforthenewcity.net. The Conductor, Ishmael Reed's play. I'm going to be in it. I got a small part. You'll see me. I do show up, though. It's long. No, my part is, I think I play a talk show host. I can say that. Not a talk show host. An analyst. So definitely catch that. The Conductor, October 13th, theaterforthenewcity.net. Okay, so topic A, like I said, the Queen still, like the old SNL joke, the Queen is still dead. And we now have at least another, she's going to be put in the ground, or her actual burial, her funeral, will be on the 19th. That's a week from today, a week from Monday, as we speak. That's a long time to be contemplating the Queen. Okay, I had a couple thoughts about the Queen. How deep are your thoughts of the Queen? I mean, nice lady, pass the crumpets and tea. How deep are your thoughts? And I think at some point, it's kind of a good thing that the Queen is taking her, well, it's not really the Queen, although she did have a hand in the preparation of the events after her demise. But, this period of time actually does her no favors, because not only do we get to do the hagiographic kind of flattering, oh, wonderful Queen, what a great Queen, we also get to say, wait a minute, how great was this queen? I mean, I know that she was a young girl when this job was thrust on her 70 years ago. But the fact is, we are in a unique time in history where if you look deeply, you'll see this confluence of history is bringing about a lot of different aspects that make you scratch your head and say, wow, you know, this is why we are the way we are geopolitically. The confluence of history, and I'm talking about the confluence of the Queen's funeral, the 21st remembrance of 9/11, 21st annual remembrance of 9/11, bringing about a lot of different threads of thought that may make you say, this is good, because maybe this is the time for a reckoning of the British Empire, a reckoning of the Queen and what she really stood for. So this is the piece I wrote on the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund blog today. My column that I put out to all the people who take my column. The AAPI community, I say, the incarceration of Japanese Americans during World War II by the U.S. and the subsequent redress payments is a major human rights milestone for us AAPI, right? I mean, it gives us the moral authority. We were done wrong. And you know, there's a similar story relevant to today's confluence. I use that word a lot because confluence, if you live in a river town or if you have spent some time near a river town, you know, the confluence is a powerful thing where the streams of water come together and create this surge of power. But this confluence of historic events that we are in now helps us see this Queen Elizabeth's passing and the anniversary of 9/11. So let's take it one by one. First, this past Sunday, I always watch the 9/11 anniversary name reading ceremony because names are real. They're landmarks in history. You know, there's nothing vague about a name. Here's a name. You might say, who is it? Well, what are you talking about? There's a name. It means something. It's what remains. So, for example, Queen Elizabeth II, or simply as she's been known the last 70 years, the Queen. Say that, prompts history. That is, if anyone bothers to learn the history, let alone remember it. But maybe that's the point of, like I said, the Queen's existence. Her Majesty's perceived goodness had the effect of obliterating from memory the evil of the British colonial past. Having this Queen was royally good PR. You'll see what I mean. Look, no Queens died on 9/11 21 years ago. Firefighters from Queens, but no Queens. These first responders were among the nearly 3,000 people to perish in New York, at the Pentagon, in Pennsylvania. On every 9/11, they get remembered because the names are all that remain. And they are all incredible names. And I was sitting watching the readings. You read the names aloud. Even the Smiths and the Joneses are extraordinary. In that slow, unrelentingly poetic march of diversity. That's what it is. It's a march of diversity where the Lees are black and white and Asian. And that list unwinds from Lewis to Liang to Arasi Liang Thanasarm. I think that's Thai. Arasi Liang Thanasarm. Then it picks up speed from Chia Kwan Lam to Charles A. Lorenzen to Charles A. L'Esperance and one literally lands on hope. I even have a favorite name I've liked through the years. Chin Sun Pack Wells. Chin Sun Pack Wells. When I first visited the 9/11 site in 2013 to see the fountains and the etched names, Chin Sun Pack Wells struck me as a name so uniquely American. I learned she was born in Tongduchun, Korea, and raised in Oklahoma. The Army enlistee ended up as the Deputy Chief of Staff for Personnel at the Pentagon. And that's where she died on 9/11. She would have been 47 on September 13th this year. Yeah, tomorrow, the birthday of Chin Sun Pack Wells. Of course, she was better known to her friends as Sunny. Ultimately, it's in the names where one finds what we need the most: a sense of hope and optimism. This year, the name tellers got to say a little more, and no one stopped them, which is good. I didn't mind the mini speeches at all. I mean, there was one woman who was kind of angry on behalf of her brother, and she read the preamble to the Constitution. You know, the we the people part. And all of them were a reminder that we are one people. Still, the names, just reading them out, used to be enough. Even President Biden at the Pentagon touched on that theme in a message that was derivative of his Soul of America speech he gave last week. You know, he said, the greatest lesson of 9/11 was a true sense of national unity, but that we also had to face down the worst impulses: fear, violence, recrimination directed against Muslim Americans as well as Americans of Middle Eastern and South Asian heritage. That's what he said. Because he knew it hadn't been easy the last 21 years. Biden said the hijackers are trying to destroy what makes us unique in the world. And what's that? He mentioned the word democracy. Our democracy is based on an idea that everyone is created equal and should be treated equally throughout our lives, Biden said. That's what makes us strong. That's what makes us who we are. The names are a reminder that we have become that great, diverse democracy of the world. But 9/11 is also a reminder that we are still trying to overcome all that changed on the day America itself became a war zone. 9/11 heightened our sense of insecurity. It led to the creation of the Transportation Security Administration and the Department of Homeland Security. But it also brought on the U.S. wars with Iraq, and then the Obama presidency, as well as a growing sense of nativism, fear, and xenophobia. It's all a legacy of 9/11, and that's what brought us Trump. That's what CNN's John King said. As the names of the ceremony, the events of the day split my screen, you can trace everything that has happened in our politics back to that day and the forces it unleashed, he said. But of course, John King left out one thing. The hijackers. They were connected to Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden, who was hiding in Afghanistan, a nation state with a long warring history with the British Empire going back to 1838. The British Empire, you'll recall, was in the Middle East. They were in Asia. They were in Africa. And if you connect all the dots, the Queen's death this week makes a discussion of the British Empire relevant again. And so now, for the Queen, the British Empire, and all it stands for, there it was this morning, or actually at Friday, St. Paul's Church in London. They changed the lyric and unveiled a new tune, God Save the King. But should we? King Charles III seemed aware of the precariousness of the state of the crown as he spoke to his subjects for the first time, promising to, quote, rule with love. The Diana kind of love or the Camilla kind? I don't know. But let's be kind. Saying the word love, Charles was more queen-like, less British Empire-like, which is precisely the deodorizing effect a modern monarch wants to have after several centuries of evil ruled by violence. That's a fact. At one point, more than a third of the world's landmass and 700 million people were under the British Empire. And you don't reach that zenith simply with love and service. It takes force and might and a roaring sense of white supremacy. You'll recall Rudyard Kipling's White Man's Burden, often used as moral justification for empire, because who but the white man could civilize the black and brown people of the world? And so Britain entered Africa and entered Asia and places like Kenya, Hong Kong, Burma, and India. The Brits were even in the Philippines. For a brief time, the Brits occupied Manila from 1762 to 1764. Maybe they couldn't find decent bangers and mash there. I know, they left. They left us to be colonized by Spain. Then ultimately, America, which colonized the Philippines after the Philippine-US War. But to see the impacts of British colonialism, just go back to how the British dealt with the Mau Mau Rebellion in Kenya in the 1950s. That's not too long ago. According to the 2005 book Britain's Gulag by Harvard professor Caroline Elkins, the British held up to 320,000 Kenyan Kikuyu people in detention camps where people were starved, tortured, raped. The book estimates that as many as hundreds of thousands of people died in the gulags. Among the people Elkins interviewed were Paolo Nzili, who said he was castrated with pliers at a camp. And there was Jane Matoni Mara, who said she was raped with a heated glass bottle. Names are like landmarks in history. Just two of the names of those victimized by the systematic violence of British rule. Elkins' book also helped to uncover a previously unknown batch of files, more than 240,000 secret files that were removed at the time Kenya became independent in 1963. The documents were part of a secret stash of history of Kenya and 37 other countries that the British intended to purge from its colonial past. But because of the documents and Elkins serving as an expert witness, a handful of survivors of the Kenyan detention camps were able to sue for reparations in 2011. They ultimately won a settlement amounting to less than £4,000 each. There was a statement in Parliament 5,228 Kenyans to be exact, were subjected to torture and treatment at the hands of the colonial administration. Exact amount of the reparations, about 3,800 pounds each. That's far less than the Japanese Americans got for their incarceration during World War II. For a prison camp experience, that was far less, or far worse, rather. And it all happened during the Queen's watch. She was the Queen, 2013, throughout the 50s. Elkins, who is now a professor of history and African and African American Studies at Harvard, and founding director of its Center for African Studies, has a new book out this year, Legacy of Violence. In it, she takes a broader look at how for centuries, Britain used what she called, quote, legal lawlessness to bend the rule of law to morally justify its imperial rule from the Middle East, Africa, and Asia. The Queen's passing couldn't come at a better time to reevaluate and understand just how strongly Britain believed in the concept of velvet glove, iron fist. That was the mentality that ruled and brutalized the world. At this stage, the news of the day is hung up on the ceremonial pomp of the Queen's death. But you shouldn't be focused on that. Think instead of how the royals serve like the cherry on top of some really, really incredibly bad things, and how they've long been a distraction from what was really going on in the name of the British people. Yeah, kings and queens have no power politically, but they give a nation an image and identity of what it stands for. Generally good things, despite the reality. But remember the cruel repression of the Kenyan Kikuyu people and other free people of the world. Think of where the ruling junta of Myanmar learned how to govern. That's what the British Empire was about. And then think of the effort to hide the documents to obscure the British Empire's enduring MO, the taking of resources in foreign lands to enrich the mother country, while subjugating the people of those foreign lands through violence and, yes, racism. That doesn't sound like a point of pride to me. But the figurehead queen and her scepter made it all seem right. She was, after all, in service and ruling, as Charles has reiterated he would do, with love. That's some tall order. No wonder in his first speech before Parliament on Monday, today, King Charles said, "I cannot help but feel the weight of history which surrounds us." None of us can. When a queen dies just days before 9/11 remembrance, we are all surrounded by the weight of history. And you can read that on the ALDEF blog, the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, aldef.org/blog. I was just trying to process all these ideas and thoughts that I've had over the last couple of days. And you can listen to shows 386 and 385. I touch upon it briefly. I get into more of Professor Elkin's stuff here. But it's hard to just ignore the things that she found in her book and the things that Africans today in Kenya are saying about how the British ruled there. It's difficult when you think of the names of people who survived. Most of them are all old now, but they survived the camps. It's hard to put them aside and see the Queen as not having some kind of responsibility for at least the whitewashing of that history, standing as the obscurant so that people couldn't see that view. They could only see the Queen, the crown, the scepter, and not the evil of the empire, which is acting in the shadow of the Queen. The weight of history, I'm telling you, it's a heavy moment. And then to have that and the evolution of the thinking, yeah, we're sad about the Queen. Yeah, okay, here we're seeing Charles become king, the kids all move up. We're seeing how the process goes in the succession. I heard someone on television say, oh, it's the peaceful succession. Well, there is no peaceful succession. They're all related. It's the survival of the bloodline. A parallel track to the meritocracy of the parliament and the political realm. And yet, there's some degree of that. I mean, it's kind of a meritocracy, but it's still a kind of elite. And yet you see the funeral, or the people, the public, coming up to the church today in Edinburgh, paying their respects. And you have to wonder how many people are even thinking about the symbol of the Queen and what really is behind or underneath the crown. Don't want to spoil the party, but it's important to put it in perspective, to have a healthy send-off for the Queen. Yeah, as I said, from the moment I found out about the Queen, we mourn her as a human being. She has some deniability, being just the head of state and not the head of policy. But she has some influence. She's still an important person. She is the figurehead who at times can be more than a figurehead because of the influence she has, the psychic national influence she has over Parliament. And now I think we're coming up to an existential moment with the Queen, or the monarchy rather. Queen's dead. We're probably not going to see another Queen for several generations, unless the younger kings scratch their heads and say, what the hell? Why are we doing this? Are we ready to become a republic? They may not be ready for that question yet in England, but there are some countries that are thinking about it, most notably Australia. New Zealand today said, no, we're not thinking about a republic yet. We're happy to have our regal costume. But think of New Zealand, the Maori, the indigenous. Canada, I think they're happy with the Queen. Trudeau hasn't said anything. But in Australia, there's been a vote. It didn't pass. But this is what makes Charles and his image and whatever transference of goodwill people have toward Elizabeth, if it transfers over to Charles, because that will determine a lot. If the monarchy is to survive. Because once you know the facts of places like Kenya, once you see what's happening in Myanmar, I mean, I know Hong Kong is a little different. I went to Hong Kong about 5 years after the handover, when Britain gave back Hong Kong to the Chinese. And since then, we know it's been trouble in Hong Kong. Hong Kongers say, we haven't been free. Not like the British. Beijing is worse than the British. Well, that may be the case. But they may be the only instance where people say, oh, we love the Queen. We love being part of the, we love being colonized. I don't know if there are any other countries that would have that kind of feeling. Malaysia? I don't know. Certainly not, Myanmar. There's rebels in Myanmar for a reason. Because the repression is there by the ruling military junta. And where did the military learn their ways? The British Empire playbook. So the weight of history is all around us. The Queen, up to the day of her funeral, we should be thinking about these things. And then, of course, 9/11, the anniversary, yesterday. And it should make us just think about our democracy and how things changed and how people began to doubt and make strange assumptions about people with turbans. Those are Sikhs. Those aren't Muslims. People didn't know. There's a tremendous amount of ignorance. But think about 9/11. As I said, 9/12, that's the day, 21 years after. That's the day when things sunk in for me. Like, oh my God. Things are not the same. And just when you think, I was on the West Coast. I was up with the markets, and as the towers came down, I saw the stock charts fall down, and I said to myself, oh my God. Now, a lot of people have recovered. But it doesn't mean that the scars aren't still there. It doesn't mean politically the change is, or the change back has happened. TSA is still there. Homeland Security is still there. The xenophobia is still there. The fear of others is still there. And you still have, Trumpism and the idea that propelled Trump into public life. That's still there. And you have people like the governor of Texas busing people. It used to be you bus people to different schools in your local area. He's busing people from Texas to DC, to New York, to Chicago because of a general fear and xenophobia. And this is still with us. 9/11. changed everything. What's stranger still is that most people out there who are part of the electorate, a large number, this is all they know. All they know is post 9/11. They don't know the way things used to be. They don't know 9/10. They know 9/12. We got to try to get back to 9/10 in some ways. In some ways. If we can. All right, so I was going to go on and talk about COVID because of course, I was watching sports this weekend and I'm thinking, oh, I'm seeing all these people. I hardly ever see a mask. When I go to a grocery store, I don't see a mask. It must be okay, right? I mean, it must be okay to go without a mask because COVID is, I'm going to buy into this idea that COVID is over. I don't know if it means I'm going to get out of my COVID closet here, and I don't know. And then I saw some stats and I saw that there are still deaths. It's still greater than the flu. COVID is not over. And then most people who are dying, 85% of those who are dying are over 65, which is a grave concern to me. So I'll take that up tomorrow because I just want you to dwell a little bit on what I said about King Charles, the Queen, the royals, Kenya, because it's important. I mean, it was just 2013 that the Kenyans won reparations. Just 2013, 9 years ago. And many people don't even remember that. Something to think about. This is an existential moment for the monarchy, I think. And then think about, like I said, the overall confluence of events. The Queen dying, the remembrance of 9/11, and how all of it is connected. Who were the hijackers? Yeah, connected to Al-Qaeda. They were in Afghanistan. Oh, and who was trying to manhandle Afghanistan for over a century? Great Britain. They had at least 2 Anglo-Afghan wars. The British Empire. Mean, nasty, and evil. And you wonder why there's a reaction to modernity, a reaction to the colonizer, a violent reaction, because for every action there is an equal reaction. I guess it's the physics of politics, but it's true. Connect the dots and you can see the legacy goes back to those Anglo-Afghan wars, creating the situation in the lives of the hijackers. Yeah, that King Charles, when he said that, I was reading it. The weight of history surrounds us. I just thought it's very, very telling. He feels it. So maybe he'll step down. I doubt it because it's a good gig. You get to wear a kilt and no one smirks. He's wearing a kilt today. But let's see how long we last between now and the actual funeral on Monday. Because there's a lot of people just sort of like in some kind of regal kind of regal funk. The Queen. Now, if you think this is something, remember when Diana died? That was something. That, the woman who would be queen. She would have been queen right now, but she probably would have been, everyone would have been terribly miserable. Anyway, so we'll come back tomorrow. We'll talk more about COVID and even, I know a lot of people don't like the sports part, but if you're a 49er fan, the big issue is if Trey Lance is going to be a good quarterback. I know it seems, is that the question of the day, really? Nothing about the Giants, nothing about the Warriors. But we'll have the Monday night game tonight. Oh, also, the Emmys. So we'll talk about the Emmys. We'll see who does something on behalf of the Queen. Maybe, the Crown stops shooting in honor of the Queen. Just, momentarily. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Tomorrow's show. Going to be a big show. Don't miss it. Live, 2 p.m. Pacific. Here, we're here Monday through Friday. We'll be here. Emil Amok's Takeout, my takes on all things considerable. Yeah, we're here live Monday through Friday on YouTube at Emil Guillermo Media, on Facebook at facebook.com/EmilGuillermo.media, at Emil Amok on Twitter, at Emil Amok on Twitter. Oh, also, YouTube at my Emil Guillermo channel. And the Twitter one, you just go to at Emil Amok and you can see my face and say, oh, there he is. Just punch it with your finger and manipulate the picture. Regular listeners to the program know that I love to talk about meditation, to lead you in. I'm leading up to guided practices. Maybe will you come join me on a Zoom and I'll guide you in a meditation. But I just want to give a quick take on, how sometimes people feel, they don't feel so great. They feel like, I'm not good enough. Do you have that feeling sometimes? I'm told that this idea of the imposter syndrome is out there, and it's prevalent among Asians, believe it or not. I don't belong here. I'm not worthy. Whenever you have friends who are talking to you, or if you say it yourself, and you mention the word shame, you feel a certain shame. I'm not doing well enough. When you hear the word shame connected with these feelings or thoughts, that should be your cue. Your cue to start loving yourself more. Being kind to yourself. I mean, that's just the red flag. Oh, I don't belong. But if hand here and hand here, give yourself a hug. A little self-love goes a long way. Because here's what I found. Show love. Because that's what you would like to get back in return. You show it, and it comes back in return. I mean, that's the crazy thing. Because it happens. So, the loving kindness meditation was something like this. As I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Back again tomorrow. Live. 2 p.m. Pacific. Until then. Mahal